Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to be able to stand here once again to congratulate the Ministry of Finance and the hardworking team in not only putting together a budget, but in certain contexts. I think one speaker from the other side attempted to put it in context. What was the team doing at what period and what other distractions they might have been having, or we were having in the nation. Remember, we had COVID, quite a stress. We had at the time when we do have it still, but so I'm happy that you're awake and alert, right? And I'm happy when the ladies are prompting me, right? So the budget was being prepared in some peculiar circumstances, which probably will never be repeated, and that's one of them. Secondly, there was a protracted economic downturn triggered mainly by the closures. When I say closures, it's automatically everybody knows what closure I'm speaking about. The massive closure of the sugar industry, not sugar alone, but the whole industry, because sugar means not only the brown thing you eat when you produce it, but for example, the health systems that they have to provide, the waterways that they keep clean and well organized, and so on and so on. So I think many people, a little aside here, speaking about sugar today and other days, seem to think that only of the substance, the sweet substance that Guyana is famous for, the American states. But it means more, probably at another discussion level. When you grow up, some of you, we can go into that. Skeldon Sugar Estate, what does it do? What about the cogeneration? What about the assistance it lends to two cattle-rearing societies in the area? Things like that. I think that my memory says there's something called the Supram pasture, which Gaisuka had some obligation to help in the community with. So Gaisuka and sugar and bodies, that's a different thing. So, but I just thought I should mention that at the side. Now, before I get into my real talk, my real appeal to you to see this as a document, a costed plan, the budget, which says Guyana is back on track. Guyana is back on track. And I definitely admit to stealing that from one of my favorite songsters. And who created that song, that thing, Guyana is back on track. Dave Martin. Way back, he said, well, as soon as he brought that tune out, I thought that, this is so appropriate. That at the time, many years ago, when Guyana was getting back on track again on the previous PPPC regime. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Somebody mentioned it here on this side. Two people mentioned it. And I think somebody over there intimated it too. Guyana, for its entire history, especially post-independence history, and even a few years before, only made progress when the PPP was announced. So I was saying and this is what when I discussed how I will enter on trade use for my presentation today with some younger folks, they said, but Dr. Ramsarran, the young people, 4 or 5 again, why are you saying Guyana is back on track? It must be so, because once the PPP is in charge, Guyana will always be on track. The problem is we have now to use lots of resources, not to be on track, but to pull us back from where we were and get us back on track. So it's no surprise with the PPPC in charge again, or the state apparatus. And it was like pause. Somebody had their thumb on the pause button. We released it. Now we can breathe. Now we can breathe. Talk to the young people in the streets, Pitt Street, Corriverton. They feel a difference. But we have to caution them. The PPP are not magicians. You need to find the resources to do the things you want to do. And although you feel free, people say it in the markets, at the funerals, at the weddings, right? And I'm told that certain people over on that other side like to attend funerals, right? And sometimes they turn up at the wrong funeral, right? But not over here. So people are saying, yes, we feel lighter. Guyana feels more fluffy. But the point is we need to be very conscious. We cannot become complacent. This is especially to the membership of the party and its structures and the supporters. But at the same time, to those persons on the other side who might have not voted for us or who might have voted against us, you have to give us, although you're seeing what the PPP is worth, PPPC is worth. Look at how many young and new faces we have on our side. Look at them. I wanted to open my intervention with telling them, with congratulating them, and look at the gender mix. And every one of them is a fighter. They came from the campaign trail, the recent campaign trail. And they're educated, they're focused, and they have lots of years ahead of them. So I'm certain that we've laid the foundation for the continued victory of the PPPC for many years to come. And why I say this? Because I never thought I would have to say this. As a person getting older, you'll be looking over your shoulder sometimes and saying, I wonder where the people to replace us. And then I look around and see Charles Ramsey. I said, where'd we safe? I see some of the new people who have come into the team, parliamentary team, and I said, we're safe. So that's the next thing. You are going to be over there for a long, long time, guys. Long, long time. And I only mentioned one guy, Ramsey, because he's tall and everybody can see him. But there's some smaller packages who are just as powerful. Dynamite. So we're going to keep you there for some time at the advice of the electorate because they made a mistake. Some of them made a mistake, they said, and they voted wrong. And then again, where is Moses and where is oh yeah, practice across here, but you don't hear him out. But where is Moses? Where is Moses? He's in the desert. Is he going to be crossing the Red Sea or the Demerara River shortly? So we are here to stay for a long while. That's why I want to recommend to you this costed plan, a budget. That's the by definition. Done well. You'll have been here for a long time, probably as much as you're old, right? So before I get into the theme that I wanted to explore today, Guyana back on track, I want to say this, and I'm not going to be hitting at the young gentleman over there who's joined the team, the opposing team recently, but I like to say that he needs to do some facts checking. For example, he did said he was very, vociferous and probably out over there, accusing the government of the PPC government of having accepted or having tons of expired medication. I would like to point out to him, I'm going to be soft on you, easy on you, and say you didn't say an untruth, you didn't attempt to deceive the assembly, but probably you have to fact check them. Those things that the gentleman referred to, in some things that were expired, bulk expired in some container, some particle space, those were gifts, and they had to be taken with the other good things as part of the gifting. And if when you get a little big and grow and you come into the system, you know there's certain agencies that bring things in freely, and what's in the container you collect. And if you have been around for some time, and if your previous ministers of health have been advising you, those on the government side and the opposition side, or even if they don't know themselves, you have to take the container, and that's a difficult thing to do because you take the container along with those things that are good and those things that are bad because the balance is a win balance for everybody. The people donating the container gets rid of it and gets rid of the stuff, but you have to take care of this destruction, especially with medication. So that was either low blow or no blow. Probably, I like to be kind to you and oh blow. Okay, is he one of the blow blows? He is one of the young blow blows. Okay, I don't. If he continues like that, Mr. Chairman, I don't think he would stay there long. Right, the young people get fed up of him in Burmese. So that's it. I'm advised, and I, as Minister of Health, was in this position too. You have to take what's in the container, but that's just an aside. As Mr. Ramjatan seems to be prompting me, he wants to hear the main thing I would speech. Right? Well, I see you're even rubbing your fingers in glee, right? So, Mr. Ramjatan, let me get on to say this. We put aside that one of your younger members, but I advise, I know you do this, give him a little talk. How to fact check. I think that's a fancy term they're using now. Facts check over ABC and CNN and so on, facts check. And they're doing it a lot with Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, who is one of the most powerful men in the world, if not the most powerful, go through fact check. So I'm advising you, sir. You're not as powerful as he is. You should take that advice too. Right? Okay. And it shows this, just another side, that the persons who are in the leadership of the Ministry of Health over there probably never assimilated, never imbued these things. They probably were just, around the place, not getting the real work done. But coming back to this, Guyana is back on track. The budget, the costed plan being presented, shows that. We would like to point out that, for example, medication. There's a shortage now across the system, and I'm talking to you as brothers and sisters now. It's a shortage. Since 2017, I'm speaking to Mr. Prakash Ramchitan, Mr. All the other good people over there. This is affecting our supporters, your supporters. And what's more, let me give you a little aside. When you're not having the medication for your chronic diseases, and you got to go to the street or the corner shop and buy it, that's okay, you're getting it. But you might not be getting it in adequate quantities and persistent and consistent. You know what? It opens you up now when you weaken what you have you say you have concomitant ailments or pre-existing conditions. It opens you up to, a larger degree, to becoming a victim of COVID or even an ordinary flu. So it's in your interest, it's in our interest, since we want to protect our nation, we want to protect your supporters and our supporters, that we overcome this. Since 2007, is it now? 2018, sorry, there have been no major purchases. That's why we have shortages. How could this be? How could this be? Who's going to be disciplined? So those are things that we're discovering, and then we'll have to put it in order. That's why I'm very delighted to see the amount of monies being given at the central level for the Ministry of Health to buy medications, let's say medicines and medical items, medical supplies, and at the same time lesser amounts, but as a tradition, being given to the regions to within their discretion by certain other emergency drugs that they might be needing peculiar to that region. Okay, but we intend to continue the diligent oversight of the spending of those monies in the regions because we know that sometimes they could be mischievous. Okay, so that's one thing why I am very enamored by this budget, this plan that has been put forward. And what's more, I made some notes here. It's being put forward in other conditions, not only the stress of the existing pandemic, but in a short space of time. Never. I told somebody reported that we'll be doing it in 21 days, and as if to fool us and make us look a little bit, attentive, they ended up doing it in 20 days. Those are things we should be looking at. And those of you who are there on the other side and were in government would know how stressful and sometimes distressful it is to make a budget, especially when you turn up at the Ministry of Finance and they want to knock this out and knock this out legitimately because there's just so much money to be had. So I want to congratulate the team that put it together in such a short time, and I want to congratulate it for even putting it in at least one day earlier than you planned. So those are things I want to observe before we get into the full discussion of Guyana back on track. Guyana back on track. First of all, well, well, that's not big. That's not big news. That's not big news now. I'm told you should consult one of your members. Mr. Felix is his name for me. Backtrack. So we're back on track. How do we stay there? What are the challenges to keep the ship on even keel? And the main challenge would be getting the resources to, for example, buy the bulk medications and medical supplies that were not there. We
Honorable
finally,
member, this is your 2-minute notice to keep you on
okay.
track.
So we would like to get that over to you, and at the same time, we'd like to tell you that the Ministry of Health has expanded when the PPPC was in office a few years ago, before we had this pause button pressed for a short while. Training. Training was a significant aspect of our work because the Ministry of Health believes, or the PPPC believes, in having the Ministry of Health and other ministries as learning organizations. In other words, you come in, you have one level of education, with specific technical education, and you stay, and then you don't stay there forever. We keep building you up. So I like to note in the budget, Mr. Speaker, the amount of in the various programs, how much money is being put aside. In every case, small but still significant increases in the monies that are being put aside for education. That is what the human factor, developing the human factor in terms of the postgraduate studies in medicine, with various aspects. I think it's now 13 programs in medicine. And of course, you see ever so often the advertisements for nurses being trained and doctors being trained. So as far as the health sector is concerned, we're going to be having a good staff of doctors. What we did note is that due to certain changes to the contractual obligations made by your regime, whereas they would have now to be waiting until their old age pensioners of 65 to get a little lump sum of money to do something with it. We will return, I get that impression coming out, we will explore actively returning the 22.5% contract, whereby the gratuity of 22.5% is given at the end of every 6 months. That's why a lot of them are leaving. That's why some of them are lethargic, or doctors, because the PPPC trained about 2,000 in a short space of time. How many have you been training? And those 2,000 now can go on further to become specialists. So many of them were disgruntled. That is the Cuban, the Jagdeo scholars. That's the term I use, the Jagdeo scholars. And some people get them angry. But under the Jagdeo regime, sometimes almost 2,000 people were sent predominantly to become doctors. Exactly, that's it. They came back to Guyana, to build Guyana, to follow their contractual obligation. And your party, they mistreated them. And you broke a contract virtually. So those are things that we will be addressing, and I want to bring to your attention, Mr. Speaker, and the nation, and of course, the people on the other side and the PPP supporters too, that there are adequate resources put there in the budget to see that this learning process continues and that Guyana gradually becomes independent or more and more independent of foreign specialists. It's difficult. We have a very beautiful, good arrangement with the Chinese and the Cubans who send in lots of specialists. The aim is now to gradually retire those. We'll never probably be able to, in the next few decades, retire them totally, but replace them with Guyanese who have been trained in different institutions, including in the University of Guyana, but also in China and in other places where they get scholarships, and of course, a significant portion being of Cuban origin from Cuban universities. So those are some of the
Okay,
things that are reflected in this budget. If you would like to spend some
honorable
time.
member, to get you to conclude on this
Okay,
track,
well,
you need an
yeah,
extension.
well, I'll conclude now. So these, I would like to recommend this budget, this plan document.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer my colleague 5 minutes more to conclude, which he's entitled to.
Thank you, honorable
Well,
minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thought I had thrown out so
Honorable,
many blows.
honorable member, you have 5 minutes to
Thank you.
conclude.
So I thought I'd thrown out so many total silence. I thought I'd bought them over, and that was good enough. But I want to thank Mr. Chair for giving me another go at it. So, Mr. Speaker, we have the Ministry of Health now is what you call a learning organization. In other words, you come in with your education at whatever level you are and however you got it, either at your own expenses or government scholarship, and we continue developing you. That's part of things that would not be seen ordinarily. It's not tangible, but it's there in the budget. Training and continue training scholarships. And that's why I'm throwing this out, because I see a lot of young people over there, and I'm certain you have people who will be of your own age group who might want to become doctors or who are doctors already, and nurses, of course, and they might want to go on further. So you'll be seeing the advertisements in the papers for these programs, but that's where we put in for the quality. We don't stagnate. We have doctors. How do we get them to become a specialist? How do we get them to become, for example, a surgeon and so on and so forth? So lots of resources are in the budget for that, and it shows that the PPPC is leading the Ministry of Health in the direction of building a sustainable health sector, sustainable system. For example, we have a good primary health care system. Let's look at the level of the health centers. The more doctors we have to be in those health centers, the more doctors we have to be in more of those health centers. It means we can do something more. We can have the doctors visit the communities, visit homes which are aligned to that particular health center. As a matter of fact, the good theory of it is this. We are hoping that each health center would have about 5,000 to 8,000 people it's responsible for in a particular community. And that the team, because we've expanded it, more nurses and especially more doctors. For example, at one time recently, we had 6 doctors at the Campbellville Health Center. Previously, you would have 1 doctor. That's years ago for a protracted period of time. I would say around the early 90s. So those are small things that are funded in this budget. I want to congratulate the Ministry of Finance for looking at it in that regard. And we will. It's things that were gotten from the PPPC regime, and it continued and it's reflected in this budget for the short period. And I'm certain it will continue in other budgets under the substantive PPPC administration. So those are little innovations that you might not feel, that you might not see. Okay. And definitely, we see that where we can have the training continue, the higher training, it will also give young Guyanese professionals the urge, the option of staying here, building families here. And then I like to go a little wider bite in the budget, not only the health sector, with the amount of the plans that PPPC has for small homes for intellectuals, for young professionals. That will buttress that effort. So not only will we be having more doctors and more nurses and more healthcare professionals wanting to stay, but they will have the material incentive to do so. Where do I stay? Do I still stay at home with my mother-in-law? Do you know the mother-in-law thing? Or do I get one of these houses that the president was speaking about? President Finale when he was Minister of Housing. So that's the link we're making, and I think the Ministry of Health will definitely be looking very anxiously at how we can retain. This is the sub-theme I'm speaking about. Not only train, but retain. Not terrorize them that you have to wait until you become 65 years to get a lump sum to buy a car, and then you find out you can only buy a bicycle. Right? So things like that we will be looking at, and I see hints of it being funded and being hinted. So, Mr. Speaker, I think my time is running. I would like to push in some other points in terms of training, not only at the highest level. We look up to the doctors as being the pinnacle of the pyramid. But down below, we also see where training can come in other subheads for other workers in the health sector. And I noticed too mental health. I'm happy to see mental health is still retained because we are accustomed to speaking of the NCDs, chronic non-communicable diseases. When I was last minister a few years ago, we had added it and mental health. NCDs, non-communicable disease, and mental health unit. So there's going to be some definitely from the traces I'm seeing in this budget and knowing what's coming, we will definitely be having emphasis on mental health. It has always been on the backburner in Guyana and in other countries. Over the past few years, the PPPC had started to put it on the front burner, getting, for example, support from international agencies, McMaster's University, for example. I remember, for example, the national psychiatrist, Dr. Byron Hari, bringing in a team of 21 specialists, 21 specialists from a Canadian Center of Excellence. I've not seen such things repeated in the past few years. The PPPC will be saying that that continues. Why? Because we put in mental health back on a pedestal. NCDs, non-communicable diseases, that is sugar or diabetes, pressure, hypertension, plus mental health. It was there towards the end of my term as Minister of Health, and I'm certain from what I'm seeing in the budgets and other discussions that it will be hitting the roof to become fully entrenched as one of the pillars of our public health system. Okay, next thing.
I think you're going to have to conclude now.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I've just whet your appetite. You and I'm open for discussions, constructive discussions in a more informal atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.